a little bit about the silent treatment and the difference about when is it the silent treatment and when is it just the fear of somebody saying anything. So the silent treatment is a tactic, okay? And it's a tactic we often observe as a part of unhealthy or emotionally abusive relationships. The silent treatment is a form of manipulation that can create a sense of discomfort, guilt, tension, fear, even abandonment, rejection. It is the silent treater, I guess, using silence as power. You may beg the other person to talk, saying, can we just clear the air? And sadly, the net result, especially if the silent treatmenter is narcissistic, is that ultimately to get them to speak, you give in. You might just agree with them. You might say anything that they want to hear just to end the silent treatment. In some cases, the silent treatment feels unendurable because of the harm and tension it is causing for children and for other people in the environment. The silent treatment may also just be a sort of a punishment, and it's a punishment that often works because for a lot of folks will say the silent treatment feels worse than being yelled at or being engaged with. And this all sets into place a bad precedent because the silent treatmenter learns that the technique works. And they get rewarded for it because you may relent, you may give in, you may even just agree with them, or they may just get the outcome that they wanted. So when that happens, they're just going to do it again, right? The low empathy that we observe within a narcissistic relationship means that the recognition that this silent treatment is hurting you isn't going to motivate them to start talking to you. The power is what's the point for them. Now, let's go back to childhood. If you had a parent that used the silent treatment, invariably for children, it feels like abandonment in a primal way. And the child may find themselves begging, crying, anything to get the parent to speak. The child will always blame themselves too for this. And it'll also plant a long-term seed around abandonment fear that can persist into adulthood. As a result, if you face this pattern in childhood, and then in adulthood, you have a partner or friend or someone close to you who uses the silent treatment, and odds are that the parent is still giving you the silent treatment, it can still feel like the same trigger again and bring up similar fears as well as conditioning you to more quickly to give in to what the narcissistic person demands. Now, where it can get really tricky for survivors is that you may think, ugh, I go silent sometimes. I freeze in this relationship. I don't know what to say. I'm literally playing all the paths out in my head. If I say this, then this will happen. If I say that, then that will happen. But then you also notice at those times when you're doing all this calculation and playing it out, but frankly, that if you are silent and you don't say anything, then you may also face rage from the narcissistic person, with the pushback being, what the hell's wrong with you? Oh, here you go, playing victim, not talking. Or they may accuse you of giving them the silent treatment. And their accusation may actually ring true because you may think to yourself well, I did just stand here silent and not say anything. For whatever reason you were silent. But when you dig deeper, what you did wasn't meant to be a punishment or a manipulation, but you think, well, I was silent. So does that qualify as another form of the silent treatment? Probably not. The freeze response is not the silent treatment because you were probably freezing or just didn't know what to say and worried if I did say something, it would become a mess. And heaven forbid you were to say to the narcissistic person, I don't know what to say because whatever I say, you get mad and it's the wrong thing. Again, something I've said over and over again, narcissistic people don't like feeling that everyone has to be careful around them because of their sensitivities, because narcissistic people think of themselves as cool and easy to get along with. So then that becomes its own battle. But in that moment, you may look silent, wide-eyed, and stuck. Now this gets complicated because, for example, let's say you went to couples therapy and you are the one, because it is a trigger for you, fall silent in conflict. There's a chance that you could be the one accusing of engaging in the silent treatment, especially if that therapist is not trauma or antagonism informed. When you get critiqued for being silent, when you face anger when you speak, and you aren't sure of the right thing to say because it often spins off into more conflict, all of that can paint you into a helpless, hopeless, powerless corner. It can yield ongoing symptomatology for you, like panic, because you literally just don't know what to do. So you shut down. And frankly, at those times, there's actually really no right answer. In some cases, it's your sense of overwhelm that shuts you down, and you are silent in the way one would, in the freeze response, the trauma response of freezing or playing dead. In some cases, you're silent because there is no right thing to say. And knowing that means that you're choosing between lots of bad options. And you're quickly trying to choose the least worst bad option, but you know it'll be bad. It's easy to be silent at those times. Now, in many cases, narcissistic people just want the fight. They use conflict to regulate and overwhelm you with word salad and relitigating past conflicts. And their willingness to go for the jugular and their sort of antagonistic pleasure of the fight as a place to shut you down and paint you as a terrible person. So if you're silent at those times and not giving them the fight, then you're blocking many narcissistic, antagonistic folks from the thing that they want, which is a fight. So sadly, you're silent. Ultimately, the fight that will finally ensue might even be that much more toxic. There is no winning at this. Silent, not silent. If they want to fight, there's going to be a fight. Silence as weapon, silence as response, silence as a problem, and silencing ourselves in these relationships are all a part of the confusing world of silence in narcissistic relationships. But if you have ever been punished with the silent treatment, but then faced the hypocrisy of being criticized for not saying anything, you absolutely get this. But remembering that silent treatment is a tactic. But a person who is silent because they're freezing, playing dead, or literally doing the calculation that anything I say here is going to result in things blowing up, so you're just sort of, and you don't know what to say, that's not the silent treatment. Those are different things. Be aware of the difference, because it's very, very likely that a narcissistic person will hit you with like, oh, you're trying to make me feel bad by not talking to me. And also remember that when it is the real silent treatment, it's often embedded in a really weird triangulated mess. You will see the narcissistic person being gregarious and very socially smooth with other people and still being very cold with you. So it's this bizarre, it's almost like you really feel like you've gone to Bizarro world. Like everyone thinks it's all great with them. And only the most perceptive in that group will say like, he's not talking to her, right? But so you'll have to deal with that. In the silent treatment, you might endure a triangulation where, let's say it's your narcissistic partner and you have kids. And that narcissistic partner who is giving you the silent treatment will turn to the kids and say, can you ask mom to pass the peas? So they'll do that kind of thing. So now they've brought the kids or whoever, whatever third parties are around into the mess. Again, tactical, calculated, but definitely not that sense of freeze and the attendant silence that we see in people who are typically in these relationships. Hope that clears that up.